Welccome to the Locals Guide. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about US Highway 501. US 501 is another child of US Highway 1 here in the Carolinas, and it runs from Myrtle Beach all the way up to the Appalachian Mountains in Virginia at a junction with US Highway 60. Along the route, US 501 is a pretty highway, especially up in the Virginia area, and I've actually also been on a spur to 501. So let's get started with this spur of US Highway 1. But first, you're watching the TheDerpHog, where I make highways content on all sorts of different topics. If you've been enjoying it, be sure to hit that like button, and if you've been really enjoying it, be sure to smash that subscribe button so you're notified on all future videos. And if you really want to help out the channel, become a member today, where you get custom cool emojis, early access to future videos, along with one free extra request per month. And if you don't want to become a member, you can always just pay $3 for a intersection request in future videos. Those highways will be listed down in the description below, and I'll make sure to shout you out when that video releases. So let's get on with the highway. As you can see here, this is the map of US 501 as it starts all the way down here in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and goes all the way up here to Buena Vista, Virginia. And the blue part is the portion that I've been on it, and the green dot is the area that I've walked on it. So with that, me talking about northbound US 501. So we begin here in Myrtle Beach, just south of 9th Avenue North, where we have a US 501 shield to stay in this lane, or we can stay on 17 Business to continue through Myrtle Beach. I've also seen this junction here in person because I've traveled through it to get to an amusement park. So that was pretty cool. And then once we go into US 501 itself, we have our first reassurance shield immediately right after. And here's Robert M. Grissom Parkway, the road that I know in Myrtle Beach, because it actually turns into one of the roads that me and my family used to get into the city back in 2021. Here I'm with US 17 proper, and it's signed north for North Myrtle Beach. No, that should be Wilmington, South Carolina, not North Myrtle Beach. While 17 South gets signed for Georgetown. No, that should be Charleston. You know what these control cities should be for? South Carolina 9. Now we're signed north for Conway at the 17 South meeting. And as we're heading towards Conway, we actually passed by Medieval Times here in Myrtle Beach, which was one of the attractions that me. On the outskirts of Myrtle Beach, we're now meeting with South Carolina 31, which gets signed north for North Myrtle Beach and south for Georgetown. Why does it have 17's control city? 17, like I said earlier, should be Charleston and Wilmington. Well, these are good for South Carolina 31. While 501 is now signed north for Conway. Outside of Conway, we're meeting one of the business routes for US 501, and proper 501 is going to be heading towards the city in US 378. And on our first mileage time, we're now signed north for Marion because we're only 3 miles away from Conway. Here is US Highway 701 as we're crossing over it, and yes, we are going to be meeting it in a bit. In fact, here is that meeting with US 701, as 701 and 501 are going to have a currency towards Loris and Marion. Here is where US 701 splits off from US 501 as it's signed for Loris and Nichols, while we're still signed north for Marion. Here is South Carolina Highway 22, which takes you back to Myrtle Beach. In our next mileage sign, we get Marion on the bottom line at 25 miles away. Alright. Here in the Marion area, we're meeting with another business route of US 501 as it takes you to US 76. While 501 proper is going to be heading north towards Dillon and Bennettsville. Here meeting US 76, which is signed for Mullins and Marion. And here I'm meeting South Carolina Highway 38, which takes you over to Bennettsville, while 501 is signed north for Lotta and Dillon. That is a lot of Dillon. Here I'm meeting with US Highway 301 and Lotta, and there's not a lot of control cities here because there's none. Why don't we get any control cities for 301 South, South Carolina? Here in Dillon, we're now meeting with South Carolina 9 and 57, and we're now assigned north for Fayetteville and Bennettsville. Okay. Here is where South Carolina 9 and 57 splits off from us, as we're now assigned solely north for Fayetteville, while South Carolina 9 and 57 somehow gets Charlotte here, which is pretty awesome. And as we're about to enter into North Carolina, we actually pass through the south of the border attraction area. And here in the south of the border attraction area, we're meeting with Interstate 95, which is assigned north for Fayetteville, which is awesome. And south for Florence. I'd rather see like Columbia or Charleston instead of Florence. And then a little bit after that, we're now entering into the state of North Carolina. Oh boy. And here in Roland, North Carolina, which is literally the first town, we're going to be joining with North Carolina 130 and splitting off from US 301. And after splitting off from US 301, we have our first mileage sign, which has Laurinburg on the bottom one at 19 miles away. Yay. Here in the Laurinburg area, we're meeting with US Highway 74, and we have no control cities for 74 East. Now we're going to be joining with US 15 and 401, as they're signed north for Fayetteville and south for Bennettsville. And here on US 401, we're now splitting off from it, as 15501 is now signed for Aberdeen and Sanford. And our first mileage sign, after splitting off from 401, we have Sanford on the bottom and at 58 miles away. Here in Aberdeen, we're meeting with US Highway 1, and we're going to be current with it as we head through Aberdeen and Southern Pines. Here in the Southern Pines area, 15501 is splitting off from US 1, as 1 is signed north for Sanford, which is great, and 15501 is signed for Pinehurst and Carthage. Here in the Southern Pines-ish area, we're meeting with North Carolina Highway 2, which is the lowest numbered state highway here in the state of North Carolina, because we don't have any state highways numbered the same as US highways, and since US 1 runs through North Carolina, we can't have a North Carolina 1. And after meeting North Carolina Highway 2, we have another mileage sign with Sanford still on the bottom line. So great choice there. Here I'm meeting in North Carolina 24 and 27, just outside of Carthage. And let us see what this sign up here is all about. Interesting. So we have a road that takes you to Siler City, but we have no highway mentioned. I wonder what it is. Oh, it looks like it's a county road that actually gets a control city. That's pretty rare here. And I looked on Google Maps, and yes, it actually has its own mileage sign too for Siler City. The only other county road that I can think of that has a mileage sign is Old US 1 Highway over here in Apex, but that's because it used to be US 1. Here, we split off from North Carolina 24 and 27 outside of Carthage, and they're signed for Cameron and Fayetteville. Now we're reuniting with US 1 as we're now signed north for Sanford. And we are now entering into the town of Sanford, which has its motto, well centered. And that is one weird looking logo. Why does it have so many arrows? Here in Sanford, we meet North Carolina Highway 42, which is signed for Asheboro and Fuquay. And yay, I give this a personal NC win. And we're also meeting US 421 here in Sanford, just signed north for Siler City and Greensboro, which is a great choice, and south for Lillington, which is also a good choice. Here is where 15501 and North Carolina 87 is splitting off from US 1, as we're now signed north for Pittsboro and Chapel Hill. And then all the way up here in Pittsboro, North Carolina 87 is splitting off from us, as it's going to be heading to US 64 proper. while 15501 head into downtown Pittsburgh. And here's one of my own pictures in downtown Pittsburgh. I actually went there last October, and I got a picture of the courthouse for some reason. And while also on that Pittsburgh trip, I tried to go to certain places, and apparently they were all closed that day. Because apparently on Mondays, stuff in Pittsburgh is closed. So it was pretty funny that I got all these pictures. I also got a picture of this stone slab here, which mentions the street names. And 15501 is known as Hillsborough Street. And then once we leave downtown Pittsburgh, we're now meeting US Highway 64, which is signed for Raleigh and Siler City. No, that Siler City should be Ashboro. And on US 64 itself, we're now signed for Chapel Hill. On our way to Chapel Hill, we passed over the Haw River here. Before we get into proper Chapel Hill, we're actually passing by Mount Carmel Church Road. And as you can see all the way over here, it takes you back to Jordan Lake. Here I'm meeting with North Carolina Highway 54, and North Carolina 54 is going to be joining us as we're going to be bypassing downtown Chapel Hill. Here is where North Carolina 54 splits off from us, as it's now signed for Raleigh, and we're still signed north for Durham, which I think are good choices. Now we're meeting Interstate 40, which is signed west for Greensboro, and east for Raleigh and RDU Airport, which are great choices. And let us see what we're signed for on 40. And this is one of my own personal pictures, and it looks like we're now signed north for Durham. Nice. Here in Durham, we're getting a whole lot of mess here. So first of all, 15501 splits off into a proper and business routes. But if you want to get into downtown Durham, you actually would take the business routes here. But for some random reason, NCDOT decided to put them on 15501 proper. No, that should be on the 15501 business route, while 15501 North gets proper for either Oxford or Roxborough or Petersburg instead of downtown Durham. Oh my goodness. Here on proper 15501, we're passing by North Carolina Highway 751, which takes you over to Duke University. And now we're passing by exit 108, which is the Durham Freeway, and takes you to Hillsborough Road, which is US 70 Business. And 15501 is now signed north to Interstate 85/US 70. No, how about give us a control city for where 85 or US 70 is going, or where either 15501 is going, not just to Interstate 85 and 70. Oh my goodness. Now we're merging onto Interstate 85, and our first exit is exit 174 for Hillendale Road. And I've actually been off that exit. Here we are meeting at North Carolina Highway 157, and it's signed for the Kentucky German of Guess Road. Do you want to know why it's called that? It's because NCDOT wants you to keep guessing on its control cities. Here's where 501 splits off from 1585 and 70, as it's signed north for Gregston Street, Duke Street, and Northgate. Well, of course, Gregston Street is the one that gets the control city, while 501 gets the Kentucky treatment. No, that should be Roxborough, not Duke Street. On our way to Roxborough and out of Durham, we actually pass by the road that takes you over to the Museum of Life and Science, which is a place that I recommend checking out. And we also pass by Durham Stadium, which for some reason I did not know existed until I made this video. Here meaning US 501 business, as it's going to be morphing back into its original route. And just south of Roxborough, we're meeting North Carolina 57, and we're going to have a concurrency here. And our next mileage sign, we get Roxborough on the top line at 12 miles away, and now we're getting signed South Boston. Okay, I'd rather see maybe a three-liner here with Lynchburg on the bottom line, because Lynchburg's a pretty big city, and it's alright to be signed from like 90 miles away. Here in Roxborough, we're meeting with US Highway 158, and we also get a Welcome to Roxborough plaque here. And let us see what this sign is for US 158 and 501. Are you kidding me? Why are we being favored for US 158? No, this should be either South Boston or Lynchburg, not Yanceyville. Foxborough, we're actually meeting North Carolina Highway 157 here. And after meeting North Carolina 157, we have our first intersection request made by Big Reg from the Rocks. They want to see the US 501 and South Main Street junction. The reason why they wanted to see it is because they actually used to live a couple blocks north of here from this junction. And they're originally from Roxborough, so thank you for the request. And this is where US 158 splits off from us as it head west toward Yanceyville, while we're still assigned north for probably South Boston. Here is where we split off from North Carolina Highway 59 here, and we can actually see that there's another mileage sign up ahead. And we're now getting two Virginia cities here. We get South Boston on the top line, and Halifax.
No, don't like that.
No, this should be Lynchburg, not Halifax. Lynchburg is significantly larger than Halifax. Why are we signing Halifax? Plus, it's only 5 miles up the road. You know how far Lynchburg is? Probably like another 30 or 40 miles up the road. So why isn't it on this sign? And we're now entering into the state of Virginia, and this is a pathetic Virginia. Oh wait, I see the real one up ahead. Never mind. And here it is. Yay! Our first mileage sign here in Virginia, we get Lynchburg on the bottom line. Why wasn't North Carolina signing it? Oh my goodness. Here in South Boston, we're meeting with US Highway 360 and US Highway 58 here. And here in Halifax, we're meeting with Virginia 360, and we're splitting off from it as we're now signing still north for Lynchburg. On our way to Lynchburg, we meet with Virginia Highway 40, and we're going to have a concurrency here. And Virginia is now favoring Route 40 because we have Blackstone on the bottom line at 65 miles away. No, Lynchburg or two-liner here is just fine, because I'm pretty sure Blackstone is significantly smaller than Lynchburg. Here in the Lynchburg area, we're now going to be joining with US 29 and US 460. And here on US 29 and 460, we have a mileage sign, and we get Danville on the bottom line at 65 miles away, while Roanoke is actually for US 460 west. Here is where US 501 splits off from US 29 and 460, as we're sent north for Buena Vista. And as we're exiting out of Lynchburg, we actually pass by US 221, which takes you over to the University of Lynchburg. And as we're out of the city, we get our next mileage sign with Buena Vista on the bottom line at 21 miles away. Here in the Buena Vista area, this is the northern terminus of US Highway 501. And sadly, we don't get any N501 shields. The only thing we get is a US 60 shield and a 2 Interstate 881 shield. So with that, me turning around and doing southbound US 501. So we begin here on US 60 itself, where 60 is signed east for Richmond, while we're signed south for Lynchburg, which is a great choice. In our first mileage sign, we get Lynchburg on the bottom line at 32 miles away. Awesome. Here I'm meeting the Blue Ridge Parkway in the middle of nowhere, Virginia. After passing by the Blue Ridge Parkway, we get our next mileage sign. We get South Boston on the bottom line at 81 miles away. Wow, that's pretty far away. Here in Lynchburg, we're meeting with US Highway 221 once again. And like last time, it takes you over to the University of Lynchburg. And then now we're meeting with US 29 Business, and we're going to be splitting off from it, and we just get the Kentucky treatment here instead of South Boston. Here we're meeting with US Highway 29 and 460, and wow, this is actually a pretty awesome mountain. I can't believe that the Liberty University literally put their logo on top of this mountain here. That's pretty awesome. Anyways, back to highways, and we're now splitting off from US 29 and 460. As we're signed south for South Boston, while 29 and 460 are signed for Charlottesville and Appomattox. Our next mileage sign, we still get South Boston on the bottom line at 49 miles away. Here in Halifax, we're meeting with Virginia Highway 360, And we're now signed south for Roxborough from 33 miles away. Alright. Personally, I'd also like to see Durham here, but again, Virginia's favoring their state routes over US 501. Here are meaning US Highway 360 and US 58 here in Danville. And then a little ways up the road, we're now entering back into the state of North Carolina. Oh boy. Here I'm meeting with North Carolina Highway 49, and 49 is going to have a currency here with US 501. And we get our first mileage sign here in North Carolina. And it's not a good one because North Carolina decided to follow what Virginia did on 501 and sign a place on North Carolina 49 over US 501. No one's going to the Haw River to fish out good control cities. This should be Durham and Chapel Hill, or just a one-liner with Durham. What are you doing here? Anyways, here in Roxborough, we're meeting with US 158 once again. And we're now signed north for Oxford because of US 158. No, that should be Durham. Now we're splitting off from US Highway 158 as it heads east towards Oxford. And we're heading south towards Durham and Chapel Hill. In fact, on our next mileage time, we get Durham on the top line at 29 miles away and Chapel Hill on the bottom line at 41. Here in the Durham area, we're now going to be splitting into a business route and a proper route, and this time we're going to be following the business route into downtown Durham. Here on Business US 501, we're meeting the northern terminus of North Carolina Highway 55, and we're also going to be meeting US 70 and Interstate 85 soon. Here are meeting Interstate 85 and US 15 and 70, as they're signed south for Greensboro and north for Oxford. If US 158 is signed east for Oxford, then how about don't give a US 15 control city here, because no one's going to be taking US 501 all the way down here to 85 to head north towards Oxford. That should be either Petersburg or Richmond, not Oxford. Because if they wanted to go to Oxford, they would have taken 158 instead. Anyways, here is downtown Durham, and it looks pretty cool. Here I'm meeting the Durham Freeway right in front of the Durham Bulls Athletic Park. And man, NC Dot is hitting a home run here because we're actually getting something pretty rare. Control cities for the Durham Freeway. That is pretty cool. It's signed south for Raleigh and north for Greensboro. Awesome. Here still on 15501 business, we're now meeting North Carolina 751 once again, and it takes you over to Duke University. How about something for southbound 751? Anyways, once we morph back into regular 15501, we're now meeting Interstate 40 once again, and just like last time, it gets the same control cities. And here, just outside of Chapel Hill, we're now getting signed south for Pittsboro and Sanford. And here I'm meeting with North Carolina 54 and North Carolina 54 and 15501 are all going to have a currency as we're bypassing Chapel Hill. And here's where 15501 splits off from North Carolina 54 as we're now signed south for Pittsboro. And the Chapel Hill is for North Carolina 86, which I'll be doing a video on in a couple of months. Here in the Pittsboro area, we're meeting with US Highway 64 once again. It just gets the same control cities as northbound. And then here in Pittsboro, when I went down there, I actually got a cool selfie with the 15501 shields. And now North Carolina 87 has joined us, and we're now going to be joining with US 1 here in Sanford. And we're meeting with US 421 once again, and North Carolina 87 is now going to be leaving us here. And on the south side of Sanford, we're meeting with North Carolina 42 once again, and this time it's signed for Ashboro. And here's where 15501 splits off from US 1 as it's now signed south for Pinehurst and Carthage. And on our next mileage time, we get Carthage on the top line at 12 miles away and Pinehurst on the bottom line at 21. Hey, it's a palindrome mileage time. Cool. Now we're meeting with North Carolina 24 and 27, and we're still signed for Pinehurst and Aberdeen. But our next mileage time, we get Aberdeen on the top line at 5 miles away, and Warrenburg at the bottom line at 33, which is pretty awesome. Here I'm meeting with US Highway 1 once again, and we're now heading towards Warrenburg. And sadly, US 1 has no control city here. Here is where US 1 splits off from 15501 as it's heading south towards Rockingham. And we're going to be heading south towards Laurinburg here. Here in the Laurinburg area, we're going to be meeting with US Highway 401. And sadly, we don't get any control cities for South 401, 15, and 501. And here's where 501 is going to be joining with US 74 as it's signed for Lumberton and Myrtle Beach. Yay. Here's where US 501 splits off from US 74 as it's signed south for Roland and Myrtle Beach now. But our next mileage time, we get Fairmont on the bottom line at 21 miles away. And Fairmont's not even on US 501. It's on North Carolina Highway 130. If you want to sign something on 501, do, I don't know, Myrtle Beach. Here in Roland, we're going to be meeting with US Highway 301. And 301 and 501 are going to have a concurrency. And our next mileage time, we get Florence on the bottom line at 42 miles away. Now that's how you favor a route. Now we're meeting Interstate 95, which is signed south for nothing here, apparently. And our first mileage sign here in South Carolina, we get Hammer at 1 mile away and Dillon at 7. What is the deal with South Carolina and having these really, really bad mileage signs? First on 17 bypass, now here on 501. What are they doing here? Here in Dillon, we're meeting South Carolina 9 and 57, and we're now signed south for Marion, Myrtle Beach, and Florence. Here we are splitting off from US Highway 301 as we're now signed south for Myrtle Beach and Marion, while 301 south is signed for Florence, which are good choices. Here in Marion, we're meeting with US Highway 76, and let us see what we're signed for on 76. I already signed south for Conway. What happened to Myrtle Beach here, South Carolina? Again, you're making some stupid choices. For our next mileage time, we get Conway on the top line and Myrtle Beach on the bottom line. So Myrtle Beach is back. And here I'm meeting 501 Business, which takes you into Marion, and we're still signed south for Conway and Myrtle Beach. Here I'm meeting the route that takes you over to Myrtle Beach, while we're signed for Surfside Beach and downtown Myrtle Beach. We're still a ways away from Conway for some reason. Here in Conway, we're meeting with US Highway 701 and the eastern terminus of US 378. And then now we're meeting South Carolina 31 outside of Myrtle Beach here, and it's signed for Georgetown and Myrtle Beach, like northbound. And here we're meeting US Highway 17, which again just gets bad control cities. And here in downtown Myrtle Beach, we are at the southern terminus of US 501, and we again get no N501 shield. You just get a 2 US 17 South shield. So with that, we're going to be ending US 501 and moving on to the places you'll go. So these are all the places that you should visit if you're ever on 501. You should visit Myrtle Beach, Medieval Times in Myrtle Beach, south of the border, downtown Laurinburg, downtown Sanford, downtown Pittsburgh, along with downtown Durham and the Live Science Museum in Durham, the Durham Bulls Ballpark, and downtown Lynchburg. And that ends US 501. Thank y'all so much for watching this video on US 501. I hope you guys enjoyed learning about the highway, and I hope one day you get to travel the highway. So I'm going to be resuming my current plans this coming week, and I hope you guys will enjoy those videos too. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you all next week.